Okay, good day, everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about passwords and authentication. And the resource I'm going to be using is a room from TryHackMe called Password Attacks. Oh, sorry, Common Attacks. So if you want to make use of this resource, you can just go to Google and type TryHackMe Common Attacks. Common Attacks. Yeah, so you see the room here, but I think you have to create an account first and sign up and do all that before you can have full access to this resource. So I'll just be covering what passwords and authentication is. This room also contains many other things like social engineering, malware and ransomware, and other stuff like that. So let me read what they said here. For better or worse, passwords are an integral part of most authentication systems. We use passwords to protect everything from our social media accounts to our banking applications. Unfortunately, despite their significant importance, it is still all too easy to create and use an insecure password, and even easier to take other actions that lower the overall security of the system. For example, even the most robust password in the world is useless if it's written on a whiteboard in full view of a web camera, especially if the password is used more than one service. So what they're basically saying is that even if you end up creating a very good and secure password, there is no use of that security if you make it easily accessible to people. Let's say you make a very good, strong password and then you write it on a piece of paper and put it in your drawer at your home. Anybody can go to your drawer and remove and take a look at your password written on that note, and they will have access to your account. So it's not just about creating a good password, creating a strong password. It's about also how you can secure these passwords effectively. So what makes a strong password now? When you are creating a password for your account, what makes a password strong? What do we refer to as a strong password? Advice on what constitutes a strong password has changed over time. In the past, people were advised to choose complex passwords that were easy to remember. For example, something like this now, you can see it's very complex. It doesn't make any sense per se or to us, and it has a date range from 1998 to 2000, and you can see it has multiple symbols like @ symbol, hashtag, and exclamation mark. It has numbers and capital and small letters. So you see, this is kind of a complex password, right? And the password above is a collection of lowercase and uppercase characters, including symbols and numeric digits. It is above 8 characters, and making it almost impossible to attack by brute force with our current level of technology. So yeah, so brute force attack is just an attack that attempts to try every possible combination of every letter, number, and every capital letter, small letter, number, and symbol. It tries every possible combination of all those characters and tries to see if you can get your password. Is a type of attack that hackers use to try and gain access to people's account. They just attempt multiple types of combinations of passwords. So that's what a brute force attack is. So what they are basically saying is that this type of password is almost impossible to crack with a brute force attack with today's level of technology, right? It's not impossible, but close to impossible, right? Day by day, we're inventing new technology that gets more sophisticated, and very soon, these types of passwords will be very easy to crack and very fast, and it will be cracked in a very small amount of time because we'll end up making much more powerful systems to perform these attacks for us. And this password is also created using knowledge that is unlikely to be held by anyone other than the owner of the password. Importantly, it also doesn't conform to normal patterns, using unusual symbols, exchanging only some characters of lit speak, and containing a date range as opposed to a single date, making it harder to guess. So what we refer to as lit is just exchanging letters for numbers. For example, now let's say your name is Ade. You, instead of putting a letter A, you use an @ symbol, then you use a normal D, right? And then instead of using an E, you use a 3. So you see, it's just substituting letters for numbers because a 3 kind of looks like an E, and an @ symbol kind of looks like an A. So that's what we call lead speak when you substitute letters with symbols. or characters rather. That said, okay, sorry. For all intents and purposes, this is a traditionally strong password. That said, the personal connection means that this password could potentially still be weaker through social engineering or in-depth information gathering on a target. So what they're basically saying is that from this password, it has a date range of 1988 to 2000. This password probably means something. This date range rather probably means something to the target, right? Let's say you have a target and this is their password, and through investigating or through social engineering attacks and various other types of attacks, you are able to get maybe their birthday, yeah, their birthday. Maybe they were born in 1988, and the current date is 2024, for example. And you can possibly guess that maybe their password will contain something like 1988 to 2024. So that's basically what they are saying here, is that this date range probably means something to their target. So all it takes is just for the attacker to perform some information gathering and they will be able to get this date range. So getting this date range is of course a huge step in cracking the target's password, because once they have the range, they'll be able to narrow down their brute force attacks to a much more closer word list, or to a much more closer possible list of passwords, and end up cracking the target's password. So this is still kind of a weak password. That's why I said that it's not really secure, or it's not really strong per se, because of the because it contains information that is most likely linked to the target. That is one property that your password should not have. Your password should never have information that should be linked back to you or traced back to you. It should never contain your date of birth, any date relating to anybody in your family or you yourself. Your password should not even contain any information. It should just be something random that somebody will see it and they can't even associate that password with you as a person, right? That's what a password should. That's one of the properties that a good password should have. So current best practices lean more towards length than complexity. For example, this is a password now. This is a statement. Vim is obviously indisputably the best text editor in existence! Exclamation mark. This is a very long sentence, right? This is what we call a phrase, right? Or let's say a sentence, right? So this is what we call a phrase, and it's very long. It contains symbol. It contains symbols. So you can see underscore and you can see exclamation mark, and it is very long. But the thing about this phrase is that phrases are something that are easy to remember, but there are also things that are very lengthy. Something that like you can just say the cat was fighting with the dog. That's a full sentence. That can be used as your password. It's something you can easily remember. It's something that is very long and secure. So now imagine you now start swapping out some letters with some numbers or symbols. You start to make that passphrase complex. So in the sense, you are basically having a very lengthy password that is a phrase that has nothing to do with you as a person, and also contains a combination of numbers, capital letters, small letters, and numbers and symbols. So that is an example of a very good password. So let's continue. By using a passphrase rather than a traditional password, the password is significantly longer whilst still retaining some of the more complex elements. Despite not looking quite so obfuscated, this has an advantage of being easier to remember whilst being incredibly difficult to brute force. So such a password like this now, imagine using this as your password. It's most is almost impossible to successfully brute force this kind of password, right? It's almost successful, if not impossible, to brute force this kind of password, because before the machine that is using to brute force will get to this point of these possible characters, you can just imagine how many years that would take. So it's practically impossible to get this password. So that's why they say using a passphrase for your password is better than just using a traditional password. And this phrase now doesn't make any sense to you. Like it doesn't, it's not relating to you. It has nothing to do with you. So that is one property of a good password. Ideally, however, you should use long, completely random passwords. For example, this type of password now. See, this is a very long password and it's completely random. It doesn't make any sense at all, even though this one makes sense. This one up here makes sense, right? And it's also long. But this one down here makes no sense and it's just shorter. But this one makes absolutely no sense, right? So you can see two different types of passwords now that we have. This takes millions of years to crack and are objectively the most secure option available. The drawback is usability. However, this is largely mitigated by using a password manager, which we'll discuss in this task, in the next task. So the thing is that this password is very strong, very good. But the problem with this password is that nobody can remember this password, or unless you are a very very smart person, or you can catch things very quickly before you will be able to type in this password without having to check somewhere or write it down somewhere. So this is a very hard password to remember compared to something like this, or maybe the cat was fighting with the dog. That is something that is very easy to remember and it's also long. But this is of a good length. It's also long, but it's almost, I won't say almost impossible, but it's very hard to remember. So for me, a good password, or in general, a good password should be easy to remember. That's one of the properties of a good password. It should be easy to remember. The alternative to not easily remembering your password is to make use of what we call a password manager. You can just think of a password manager as a database where you store your passwords, all your credentials, and keep them secure so that when you want to make use of them later on, your password manager will automatically fill in your login details for you. So that is what we make use of password managers. That's why we make use of password managers. But the problem with password managers is that password managers can also be breached, they can also be attacked. Your passwords can be extracted, right? Putting all your passwords into one password manager is like creating a single point of failure. If an attacker ends up getting access to that your password manager and they extract all your passwords, that's the end. They have access to all your accounts. So that's the downside to using a password manager. If that password manager ends up getting compromised, that is most like it will ruin your life if you have very credential sensitive information that you store on those accounts. So that's the downside to using a password manager. And the best way to store a password is in your head. So things start to get a little more complex and complex like you start to think, how do I create a very complex password that meets all the password requirements, and I don't need to store it in any password manager. I always have it in my head. It starts to get very 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 complex. So that's kind of the problem we have nowadays. People still make use of password managers, right? It's not like password managers always get hacked. Just make sure you use a very very secure and strong one, and one with a good reputation. But always having in mind that you are not 100% safe if you are using a password manager. There's chances that that password manager will get breached and your passwords will get stolen and extracted. So just keep that in mind. So what makes a password weak? People often go for simple passwords that mean something to them, often following one of the few example patterns. For example, a commonly used pattern is name, location, followed by a year, followed by an exclamation mark. So that's normally how people create passwords. They'll start with a capital letter, followed by small letters, followed by number, then followed by symbol. That's a very common pattern, and that should not be used, because if it's a common pattern, hackers will obviously know that that's a common pattern, and they will be making what we call a word list. A word list is just a list of possible passwords that your targets might be using. So hackers will create a list of possible passwords, and when they create that list, they will make sure that they use this format in all those passwords. So that's why you should not be using known formats like this. Capital letter, small letter, number, symbol. That is a very known pattern. Make sure you mix it up. Instead of starting with a capital letter, why not start with a symbol? Or why not put a symbol in the middle, right? Or put a capital letter in the middle, or put multiple capital letters, multiple numbers, mix it up, make it random. Try to make it as hard as possible, and try to not follow the easy way, or the common pattern, right? That's what makes a password weak, by following easy patterns. So this is enough to satisfy most password complexity requirement. Yes. So when you are creating an account on Google, on Facebook, or whatever, when you type in a password, they will be showing you that, yeah, this password is weak, this password is strong. So the most requirements on most sites is that as long as your password is eight characters long, it contains a capital letter, a small letter, a symbol, and a number, then the password is strong to them. But that's not always the case. It doesn't mean it's always strong, right? So you don't always have to follow what the site is showing you, that your password is strong. No, no, no. It doesn't mean your password is actually strong. Make sure that you look at and assess the password you're typing in. Does it meet the requirements? Are you using a very common pattern? Make sure you avoid using weak patterns like this. So make sure you use a pattern that is not normal, and make sure you use a password that is not related to you, that cannot be traced back to you. That is how you create a password. You don't follow what the social media site or the website is saying. Try and create a very secure and strong password for yourself, because that's the whole point. You are trying to secure your data. So make sure you create a very good and strong password. So, however, it is trivial to guess if an attacker knows that you have a son called Gareth who was born in 2012. This kind of password is inherently extremely insecure. So that's the thing. A lot of people, especially elderly people, right? They always like to use uh, the names of their children. For example, they will use the name of their child, the year that their child was born, and then they'll just put on a random symbol. Nothing is stopping a hacker from going on your social media, doing tons of research, getting your son's birthday. Maybe you posted a happy birthday, my son, and they will get the son's birthday. They will get your son's name, get many other information about you, your wife's name, your child's name, everything. Nothing is stopping them from gathering all this information and using all that information to create a list of possible passwords. It's things that they do. There are tools out there that they will feed in all this information about your targets, right? The tool will request what is your target's name, what is your target child's name, their pet's name, their wife's name, their date of birth. It will request various information from you. Then when the tool collects all that information, the tool will automatically create possible list of passwords based on that information that you supplied. So that's so that that's a way that hackers can use your information to get your password. So make that's why we always say don't use information that can be traced back to you in your password. Imagine using something random. Performing an investigation on you won't yield your password. So because your password has nothing to do with your personal life or anything at all, right? So that is why it is good to use strong passwords. So in short, any password that could be easily guessed by someone who knows you relatively well, this includes an attacker looking at your social media, is a bad idea. Equally, short passwords, especially those that don't contain any non-alphanumeric characters, are weak against brute force attacks. We will look at this in more depth later in the task. Of equal importance to password strength is password reuse. You can have the strongest password in the world, but if you use it across numerous accounts and it gets leaked, an attacker can simply use the strong password on all affected accounts. Equally, if you find out that that your password has been exposed, you'll have a lot of work to do changing all your account's password. So yeah, cracking password is not the only way people can get your password. If you have a social media account, let's say Facebook, and hackers are able to gain access to Facebook's database, once they gain access to their database, they will be able to extract hashed passwords and start to crack those passwords. If they end up getting the plain text password, right, from the Facebook database, and imagine they get your own password, maybe your password is strong, let it be the strongest password in the world. As long as you're able to extract that your password from the database, they already have access to all your accounts. So that's why you should not reuse the same password on every single account. Because imagine it only takes an attacker one time to get your password, and then they have access to every one of your accounts. Maybe they got your password through maybe just one small nonsense site that you just created, that you just signed up for quickly, right? And you use the same password you use on all your strong accounts, all your confidential accounts, even your bank accounts. And then the attacker ends up extracting your password from that useless website that you signed up for years ago. They'll be able to use that password to log into all your other accounts because you use the same password across every other account you created. So that is why you should not reuse passwords too much, right? At most, maybe 2 accounts or 3 accounts. Don't use it over every single one of your accounts. And if it gets leaked and you are notified, it will be stressful to start trying to change your password across all those multiple accounts. So that is why you shouldn't reuse your passwords. So let me just talk about this section, and that will be all for today. So unfortunately, not every service stores passwords securely, making it doubtly important that you don't reuse passwords. So when you sign up for an online account, for example, now the provider must store a copy of your password in order to validate it the next time you sign in. But it poses a huge problem. How can the passwords be stored securely? Storing passwords as plain text, same way as the same way you submit them, isn't an option as every password will be instantly leaked if the database is ever hacked. Encrypting the password is an improvement, but not by much. If the passwords are stored encrypted, then they can also be decrypted. An attacker simply has to obtain the key, and they can turn every encrypted password back into plain text. Every encrypted password was part of what made the 2013 Adobe breach so serious. The industry standard password storage method is referred to as password hashing. Password hashing, or simply hashing, involves using complicated mathematical algorithms to take any input and turn it into a unique fixed length output in a way that is impossible to reverse. This means that when you sign up, your password will be hashed and stored in the database in a way that stops everyone, including server admins, from being able to read it. When you try to sign in, the same algorithm is applied to the password that you are supplied. If the stored hash matches the hash of the password you are trying to log in with, then you are considered to have successfully authenticated. So what we are basically saying is that websites don't store your password as you see them. So what am I saying? What you can read here, this English here, you can see every text here. You will refer to it as plain text. This is because it is readable. You can see them. But the opposite of plain text is what we call encrypted text, or what do they even call it again? Or hashed, or you can call it hash text, encrypted text, cipher text, or whatever. So it is text that you cannot read, that does not make any sense. You can take this text, for example, now, and encrypt it, and it will be unreadable. It does not make any sense. But maybe you want to send a text to somebody. Let's say you want to send a message to somebody. You first of all encrypt the message, right? The message, once you encrypt it, it will be unreadable. It does not make any sense at all. So then you send that encrypted text to the person through whatever means, maybe social media or whatever. When it reaches the person will download it and then decrypt it using maybe a special key that you gave the person. So using that special key, they are able to decrypt the text, and then they will now get back the plain text that you are trying to send. So it's a way of trying to secure things, right? To make sure that no other person apart from the authorized person is able to view messages. So in the case of websites, when you create an account and you type in your password, let's say password 123, right? Websites normally store passwords and customer information in what we call a database. That's where you store customer information, including their account information, password, and stuff. They store it in a database. So it's that database that they store passwords, right? Passwords cannot be stored as plain text, because imagine a case where an attacker gains access to a company server. They are able to access the database and extract all the passwords. If passwords were stored in as plain text, the hackers will just extract the plain text and they will be able to use the password just like that, because they can see the password as the password is. But what websites do is that websites store passwords as hashed text, or cipher text, or encrypted text that you cannot read, you cannot understand. You will see it and you can't understand it. For you to understand it and for you to even make use of it, you have to decrypt it. So that is the secure way of storing passwords in database. But unfortunately, especially in the past, websites don't normally do that. They will just store customer information, customer passwords as plain text in the database. So when hackers end up exploiting a vulnerability on the website and they gain access to the website database, they will just extract the passwords as plain text and they will start making use of the password like that. So that is that's what we are talking about. That even if you create the strongest password in the world, it is still up to your website to make sure that they have a secure environment, or they have a secure way of storing your passwords in their database, so that even if there's any data breach, hackers will extract the hashed passwords and not the actual passwords. And for them to get the actual password, they have to crack it, which can take very long time to do. So that's about that. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you guys implement everything you've learned in this video. Make sure you create strong passwords. Make sure you always use good passwords. Make sure when you're creating a password, you use at least 8 characters. Make sure there's a number, there's a capital letter, there's a small letter, there's a symbol. Make sure you don't follow the traditional format of a password. Capital letter, starting with a capital letter, followed by small letters, followed by numbers, followed by symbol. That's the traditional format of passwords. Make sure you don't use the traditional format. Try and change it up. Another thing is that make sure you don't use the make sure you don't reuse your passwords multiple times. You have a single password, at most 3 accounts you use it on. The next 3 accounts use another password entirely. If possible, make use of a passphrase instead of just a password. A passphrase can be like, I like playing football, but just make sure you don't like playing football actually, because that's another property of a password. Make sure you don't use a password that can be traced back to you. You like playing football, yeah, and you're gonna put football in your password. That's wrong. You understand? So make sure you use something random, something that does not make sense or does not have anything to do with you at all. That even if a hacker investigates you from head to toe, they will not be able to find anything that can be used for your password. So make sure you follow all these rules, and you would have a more secure experience with uh you will have a more secure experience online. I just realized that my screen was not presenting, so sorry about that. So it doesn't actually really matter, Sha. So I'll just show you the resource I was using since I was reading from it. So I'll show you the resource I was using here. Okay, so this is the resource I was making use of. The name of the resource is Common Attacks by Try Hack Me. So if you also want to make use of this resource, just go on Google and type in Try Hack Me Common Attacks, and you will find this resource. It's the first link here, Common Attacks. So you can read up on it. It contains a lot of other attacks. The section I just covered was task 5, passwords and authentication. There are many other common attacks that you can read up on. So that's about that. So thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day.